Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Monday, April 27th, 2020, and today we're going to be discussing how the Republican Party can retain their Senate majority. So I've made my prediction video for the month of April, and I will have a new updated one upcoming, I think around May 1st through 3rd. I'll try to do the Joe Biden-Donald Trump prediction first, and then go into the governor Senate elections. Maybe I'll do some House elections, but today we're going to be talking about the United States Senate. So the Republican Party currently has a 53-47 majority in the United States Senate. This comes after a pickup of 2 seats in the 2018 midterm elections. If you remember back in 2017, there was a special election in the state of Alabama and the Democrats won it. And in 2016, the Republicans had a majority of 52-48. So this time around, they're at a better, stance than when they were before, where they were before in 2016. Sorry, I have to catch my breath here. But when we look at this Senate map, they have a number of states that they can probably hold on to if it means retaining the Senate majority. As of right now, it doesn't look like they're going to hold on to the presidency just because Joe Biden is pretty much peaking at this point. I mean, sure, Hillary Clinton looked like she was on track to win this election in 2016, but at the same time, the numbers do look a little bit better for Joe Biden, and also polling definitely has been refined, so they hit the key areas that they didn't in 2016, and polls actually weren't even that off in 2016 either. If we go ahead and take a look at all of the safe Republican states in terms of the United States Senate, pretty much the same states that we normally see. There are some states that are left out, such as Texas and Mississippi and Alabama, not because they're not safe, or Alabama, for example, would not be safe, definitely, but states like South Carolina, these states are considered likely states, which we will get into in a second. So when we look at all of the remaining safe Democratic states, that pretty much leaves out a total of 18 toss-up seats. So, how are these states going to end up voting? Well, first of all, when we look at the states that are pretty much going to go to the Democrats, let's talk about the likely Democratic states, because these are ones that the Republican Party should primarily be not targeting. These are seats that are going to go for the Democrats, and any money here is pretty much wasted. Actually, I rate Virginia as safe blue, but I guess you consider it likely. It's probably going to be larger than a 15-point margin as we move into, with a popular incumbent, into the 2020 election. If we take a look at the Northeast, Maine and New Hampshire are very interesting. New Hampshire actually just got moved recently into the safe Democratic column by a number of pollsters. My prediction from April still keeps it in the likely column. I'll likely revise it in the upcoming months, but New Hampshire for right now, we already know is going to go for the Democrats. When we look at a number of these other elections, the Republicans aren't without likely states. Texas, Kansas, Mississippi, Georgia at large, South Carolina. That shoots the Republican number up to 45. So the remainder of these states, actually Kentucky would be considered likely as well. The remaining states would all be within lean or tilt. And the Republican Party pretty much has a strong presence in states such as Alabama and Georgia's special election in Iowa. In fact, all of the states on your screen that are toss-ups, except for the state of Maine, Donald Trump won in 2016. So what's contested about Alabama? Well, Doug Jones is a Democrat incumbent who was first elected in 2017. He votes with Donald Trump a lot more. When I say votes with Donald Trump, it means that he aligns with Donald Trump in terms of his votes in the United States Senate. He does that a lot more than the Democrats in neighboring states. Now, sure, I mean, the Democrats are never really supposed to vote with Donald Trump, but he's not as liberal as you might seem, which is exactly why this election is still contested. If he was a diehard Nancy Pelosi type liberal, he wouldn't even be considered having a competitive race. I rate this race as lean Republican, and it honestly will be a Republican pickup. The Democrats shouldn't spend too much money here because, it is Alabama. Even if they win this one now, 6 years from now, that race is going to be 100% competitive, regardless of who's in office. And, Alabama doesn't have much hope for the Democrats. I honestly think they should focus a lot more of their attention towards states such as North Carolina and Iowa than the state of Alabama. So pretty much the Republicans just have to hold on to Alabama and Georgia's special election. These are two, seats that we know are probably going to go to the Republicans regardless, so not too much energy needs to be spent on the general election there. Maybe for the Republican primary between Jeff Sessions and Tommy Tuberville, but not too important for overall party composition. So Arizona, now this is an interesting one. I honestly think that Mark Kelly is probably going to be one of the stronger Democratic candidates that they've put up in this race. I honestly don't see Arizona going to Martha McSally. Voters rejected her in 2018. They probably are going to reject her in 2020. She's too fresh of a name that lost, that it's going to be really hard to see why she would win the Arizona Senate race there. So the Democrats are at 47. The Republicans have a pretty easy pathway to the majority. They only need 51 seats, or 50 if Donald Trump wins again, but I honestly don't think that they should be betting on the fact that Trump wins again. They definitely should be trying to get an outright majority. So let's talk about the states that are best next in line, I guess, for them to reach this path. So Iowa seems like a very obvious one. Joni Ernst was first elected in 2014. She defeated a Democrat, I believe a Democrat incumbent, and went on to be a pretty notable senator from Iowa. However, she is pretty unpopular in the state of Iowa. She isn't necessarily the, I guess, Mitch McConnell type unpopular, but she definitely doesn't seem to be doing too well. I think she's number 3 in terms of most disapproved of senator, but the margins are vastly different than the ones you might see for even Susan Collins or Mitch McConnell. So when we look at the state of Iowa, looking at the presidential election results from 2016, and you look at the 2018 midterm results, they give out different vibes. We're talking about a Democratic wave year in which the Democrats did win 3 House seats in the state of Iowa, previously only having 1. But in the presidential election, this state went to Donald Trump by almost 10%. Donald Trump's approval rating here is, I think, an overall net -11 to -13, which is practically insane considering how much of a margin he won this state by. Though a lot of those voters who do necessarily disapprove of him now will end up voting for him. They're Republicans at heart, and I don't see why they wouldn't vote down ballot as well. Joni Ernst also isn't one of the more vulnerable senators. The Democrats definitely have been targeting Montana, Arizona, North Carolina, Maine, a lot more than they have been targeting the state of Iowa. So I think that Iowa is definitely the next safest bet for the Democrats, for the Republicans, if we're talking about a pathway to their majority. So John James is a pretty notable candidate. He did outperform the Democratic wave by around 2% in 2018, but at the same time, he's running against Schur, who may seem like not as notable as Demi Stabenow, but a pretty known incumbent senator. I mean, he's been a senator from the state of Michigan. He's not a nobody. John James is also running in a year in which the Democrats are expected to do well in the state of Michigan in the presidential election. Donald Trump can win without Michigan. Keep that in mind. And it was the, I think, closest state in 2016. Donald Trump only won it by 11,000 votes, and that was less than 1%. And when you take a look at the 2018 midterm results, they held on to the United States Senate seat. Incumbent Debbie Stabenow defeated Republican nominee John James. Keep in mind, this is the same type of Martha McSally situation, except John James wasn't appointed. So my screen recorder cut out, but I was just going to wrap this up by saying I honestly don't think that the state of Michigan would be the best, use of money for the GOP. I honestly think that Gary Peters is going to end up taking the state, though it may not be a big margin. We're talking about a closer presidential election, but still the Democrats are expected to do better than they did in 2016 at least. And, when you only have to outperform by 1% to win statewide, I honestly don't think it's going to be too much trouble for the Democrats. So it narrows down between 2 states, or 3 states actually, Montana, North Carolina, and Maine. Now, before 2018, I would have said that the state of Maine is absolutely going to be a safe state for Susan Collins. She was a very popular incumbent, and in fact, she rivaled Bernie Sanders on being the most popular senator. I think in fourth quarter 2016, she had a 71% approval rating. Now she's down to a 42% approval rating with a 52% disapproval rating. Before, only 13% of her constituents disapproved of her. She was a very well-known senator for being bipartisan and a Republican from an honestly Democratic state. And when we look at the state of Maine's 2016 election results, that was likely because of Hillary Clinton's unpopularity, not because the Democrats don't have a hold in the state of Maine, because 100% they do. In 2018, they did well in the United States House, picking up 1 seat when there's only 2. The Democrats also won the governor's seat up in the state of Maine, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was because they had a new system of voting that I don't think they've implemented for 2020. And they also have an incumbent, Angus King, an independent who caucuses with the Democrats, typically gets added to the Democratic numbers. But overall, when you take a look at the results coming up in 2020, she's a very unpopular incumbent. Susan Collins looks like she's on the pathway to lose her race. I've rated this race as lean Democrat. Okay, Sarah Gideon has done very well in terms of fundraising and also opposing Susan Collins on a number of things. In fact, I think they're neck and neck in polling data now. So the Republicans, in order to keep their pathway, would more than likely have to go through North Carolina 100%. I think that one would be the easiest out of all 3. And then Montana, because Montana is going to be a very close race. We have Steve Bullock, an incumbent governor from the state of Montana, obviously very well known, has won statewide races before, and ran for president in 2020, so definitely has a lot of leftover money, and he's going to enter into this race being previously on the ballot 4 years ago, winning in the same year as Donald Trump, and is also a popular governor. He's a Democrat from Montana, and Montana voters have never shied away from splitting their tickets. So I honestly think that Montana is going to be a struggle for the GOP as well. Now, if the Democrats were to win a seat out of all three, it would be Maine, but Montana is not too far out of reach. So in order for the GOP to retain their Senate majority, they will need to carry the swing states of Montana, Iowa, North Carolina, Alabama, and Georgia special election. And the states they would have to retain are all of the states considered likely and safe. Now, the only state that I think could be the two wild cards out of these all are Kansas and Kentucky. I don't think that Amy McGrath is going to do too well in Kentucky, but Kansas, I mean, if Chris Kobach is the nominee, the Republicans could be in a lot of trouble once we hit Election Day. So we'll wait for all of the things to finalize, see how I think Barbara Boiler is doing in Kansas. Right now, she's neck and neck with Chris Kobach, which, again, is not a good sign. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below, and I will see you all tomorrow.